Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our illuminating content. Here is episode 157.
And it really is about conditioning ourselves to say, let's check in with our conscious creation, because to follow intuition, we actually have to live in the belief of the present or the future, not the belief of the past.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Jepsen. Jepsen is a marketer, entrepreneur, investor, and best-selling author. He is the founder of Wise Men Institute, where he mentors individuals in wisdom and wealth so that they can regain their personal power to follow their star. He and his wife homeschool their 4 children. Welcome, Jepsen.
Hey, thank you. So good to be with you.
I'm so excited to have Jepsen with us, and we're going to talk a lot about his mission and different things that he's doing. But before we start on any of that, would you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. So as you mentioned, I have a beautiful wife, and we have 4 children. We have a 9-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and then we have twin 2-year-olds. And so we're a busy family right now. And if you can think of terrible twos,
times 2.
Times 2. And people always ask, is it twice as hard? And I think it's like a multiplying effect. It's, it's much harder than that. But as a family, we love to go camping. We love traveling. We've traveled quite a bit this last summer and couple months. And I'm actually just excited to be home right now and just jump back into homeschooling and being at home with our kids. And one of the other passionate things we do as a family is we love what's called maker workshop and those kind of things. And so we have a 3D printer. We have a lot of carving tools and woodworking tools and different things. And so we're often found out in the garage just making stuff. And I really love that creative process. And it just lights us up as a family. And that really lights us up. And it's really part of our homeschooling curriculum as well.
I think those hands-on things, they're exciting for kids. You know, there's something they can hold in their hand. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about your profession and your story, your journey, what led you to discover what you love to do.
My background is I worked for a nonprofit for the last 16 years, and I really had a great job. I loved what I was doing, and I felt I was making a difference. And I heard a church talk once, and basically I'll paraphrase, but it said, "Will God's blessings be fulfilled in your life if you continue on your pathway?" And I knew the answer was no. Something in my head just went screaming, no, it won't. And this was 3 or 4 years ago, and I didn't know what that meant because I was happy and things were going well. But I realized that planted the seed for me to just allow that gestation process of possibilities to start in my mind. And that led me to where I'm currently at as an entrepreneur and a best-selling author and writing and just going out and doing a whole bunch of different things. And if you would have asked me 1 year ago or 2 years ago if I would have ever seen myself on this pathway, I probably would have said no, but it's the greatest thing that I've done. And I'll have to give some credit to you, Rebecca, and your podcast. I was thinking as I was preparing, you had people like Danny Flood or Cameron Taylor on your show, and they were living lives, these were 75 episodes ago or something. And, Danny was talking about living in Thailand, and I'm like, I'm not living in Thailand. And I didn't know if I wanted to live in Thailand, but at the same time, there was something, part of me saying, maybe I do want to live in Thailand. Why don't I want to live in Thailand? Because he just had so many great things. And I listened to Cameron, and he was an author and he was a coach. And I actually emailed Cameron and said, thank you for being on your show. I've never told you that, but
that's great. Yeah.
And we just had just an informal conversation, but he kind of opened some doors of possibility for me to say, why am I not an entrepreneur? And why am I not following this? And so that one church talk has really kind of turned the pathway of my life to say, get in alignment with what you feel God wants you to do. So
kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying, and I want to clarify this, is what I'm hearing is that maybe you were just following the path that you expected other people. We just all live our lives the way that other people expect us to, I guess. And it wasn't necessarily an unhappy life, but maybe it wasn't what you felt like your mission really was. Is that a correct assumption of your feelings?
It was interesting. I would say yes, but the interesting thing is when I allowed intuition to speak, it cried out no. I was happy. I was content. But now looking back, I realized the decisions that I was making being happily employed would not get me to where I believe that I needed to be in alignment with what God wanted me to do. And that's kind of an interesting thing because I was happy. And I was thinking about it because I had listened to like Oliver DeMille, with the Thomas Jefferson education, and he talked about being an entrepreneur, and that was the furthest thing from my mind. But there was something saying you should reconsider. And so I think just allowing those possibilities sometimes when we listen to someone or those moments of inspiration, you're like, Danny's talking about something that's intriguing to me. I don't know that I would really want to live in Thailand, but maybe I'll try it on for size and see what comes of it.
Well, and the thing that I really loved is the question, that why wouldn't I want to live in Thailand? Why wouldn't I want to do that? And I think that sometimes that's what our life needs to be, is we ask those questions and then maybe it would lead us to our mission, which kind of leads me to what your mission is now. What do you feel like your mission was and being more authentic with that mission?
Well, one of the things that I realized is, again, I was making a difference in the world and I loved what I was doing. But one of the key things that I realize now, looking back, is I was always checking my intuition against my bank account or my vacation schedule. And so just the mere fact that I was happily employed, I still every Friday got a check. and I wasn't able to go much further beyond that check. Because if it was $10,000 a month or whatever, I couldn't go up to my dreams or intuition to go to $20 or $50 or $100,000 just because I was constrained within that realm of possibility.
Boxed in type thing.
And just like even, we have this Thailand theme going on, but I couldn't, 2 weeks of vacation wouldn't allow me to have a very fun time in Thailand. And so those parameters that I had placed upon myself, now I realize were just almost self-imposed, that now I don't have those same parameters. If I needed to go and live in Thailand, I could. And we've kind of considered it as saying, why shouldn't we go homeschool in Thailand for 6 months? And one of the things with homeschooling is we always realize that one of the reasons we homeschool is because my job at the time had some flexibility, and most of my meetings were in the evenings. And so I had the whole middle of the day open. So if my kids were going to school during the middle of the day and I had meetings in the evening, I would never get to see my kids. So we just chose to homeschool for that reason. To say, let's homeschool just because I can be home during the day, and then when I go to work at night, they won't miss me because they'll be in bed or whatever.
Helps your family dynamics or strengthens that family relation.
Yeah, and it was really great for us as a family, and we just kind of continued that on. But we realized that when I didn't have that job anymore, or even if I had the job, there were constraints on that because we're free as a family, mom and the kids are free to go to the Grand Canyon this week. Dad has a job and he has to go work because he has those constraints. And I realize now that that's the great thing about homeschooling and being an entrepreneur is you're able to have some of that freedom. The freedom that your kids, in my case, my wife had, I can now follow them and say, let's do what we really fires us up. What does intuition tell us to do right now?
That was wonderful. Well, and tell us a little bit more about the Wise Man Institute that you're the founder of. What is that about?
Well, I'll do it in the context of my book. So I wrote a book called In Search of the Wise Men, and really it's modern parable fiction based book. And the main character, he finds himself kind of at a crossroads in his own employment, and he finds a mentor, and the mentor introduces him to the story of the three wise men. And he comes to realize that the wise men as a metaphor, they represent, the power, the wealth, the health, and the connection to follow the star. And I've always been passionate about the wise men. I love their story. It's one of the exciting Christmas stories, but there's only 12 verses. There's not much substance there for that. But I had asked questions, who were they, where'd they come from? But as I started to transition in my journey, I asked a little bit different questions like, what kind of businesses did they have to be able to take a journey of several thousand miles? How were they able to afford meaningful gifts of the gold, frankincense, and myrrh? What were their health plans like? To ride a camel for thousands of miles across rugged desert. I've ridden a horse for a day or two, and but I couldn't imagine them being unhealthy, and I couldn't imagine them either going and saying to their wives, "Hey, honey, the guys and I were out last night and we saw a star, and we want to take a journey for a couple years. What do you think?" We'd call that a midlife crisis, right?
Yeah.
But I just imagine that the wise men had wives that were supportive, that said, we believe in your mission. We believe that God speaks to men, and please do take that journey, and everything will be okay. And so I started to ask those questions, and that's really about where I started to formulate this idea into the book at first, is just to say, how does an individual prepare themselves to follow the star? Whatever the star may be, and I've boiled it down even further recently to say, how do we fulfill the measure of our creation? And what does that really mean to have enough money to fulfill that measure, to follow that star, to not disqualify ourselves because of, I can't afford to follow my star, or I'm not smart enough to follow my star. I don't have time to follow my star. Any of those things, because that's one thing. You think of how many thousands, if not tens or, thousands of people who saw the star. And we have an account of, a handful, with the wise men, the shepherds, and, here and there, but we don't have an account of anyone else. So does that mean no one else followed? And probably, even looking at our own society, that would mean most people that disqualified themselves because of one reason or another.
Well, and the other cool thing I think about the wise men is that they were actively looking for that star. They were asking those questions and looking for it. I love the analogies that you put in there. I've never really thought about it, but that's very true that, they were in a position that they could follow that star.
Yeah, and it goes back to your point, that self-directed learning. Why were they even looking at the heavens, or they were studying the prophecies or whatever to be able to do that. And that's phenomenal for all your listeners as well as everyone, is that self-directed, homeschooling, wherever we call it, is that education for a life, that, the fire starter, everything you talk about is how do we continue to have that passion to be able to do that?
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you. And then your institute, what is that about? I mean, is it based off of the book then?
A lot of it is. I really work with people to help identify what I call their limiting beliefs. The studies will show that about 75% of our mind chatter is negative. So we're basically sabotaging ourselves, with I am stupid, I am dumb, I am poor, I am... So whatever those I am statements are, so often they're based on unconscious responses from the past. And so we're saying I am poor. Well, that may have represented the past, but doesn't need to represent the present or the future. And it really is about conditioning ourselves to say, let's check in with our conscious creation, because to follow intuition, we actually have to live in the belief of the present or the future, not the belief of the past. And tied into that word beliefs, if you put beliefs, you have L-I-E and then, the S at the end. So there's lies within some of our beliefs. And when I realized all this, I said, this is really revolutionary. People can start to control and identify their main limiting beliefs. They can change anything. They really become limitless to their potential because they can fulfill that measure of the creation without any harness. They don't have to be shackled by the past or anything. And so that's what I really at the Wiseman Institute work to do, is how do I help individuals to overcome those beliefs and then to step into the laws of, I call them the 10 laws of the maker. I go back to that maker space concept that I talked about, there are universal laws at play. And once we identify those laws and have them work in our favor, they become greatest asset. But so often we understand the laws. I'll use the law of attraction as one of them, or the law of harvest. Those are all familiar. But what happens is, because we have these self-sabotaging beliefs, we can't ever allow those laws to work in our favor. Because you have to overcome those beliefs first before you can allow those laws to start the process of manifestation and working in your life. And so,
well, and I'm just curious how many people that you've mentored that were like you, that maybe didn't even realize that they were limiting themselves. They're happy, they're kind of doing what they've been told to do or what they feel like they should do, but yet they're not fully living, like you were talked about, in the full measure of their creation or even the mission that God has given them. Have you encountered some of those types of individuals?
Yes, I work with them all the time, and that's the interesting thing is, I'll use an analogy. One of my mentors, I went and said, I was just frustrated about mentoring and this whole thing. It wasn't going as well as I wanted it to, and so I said, I'm done. I'm done doing this coaching. I'm done with all this process. And he jokingly said, and we were in a group of people, and he said, news alert, all 7 billion people on the face of the planet have found a mentor, and no one needs a mentor anymore. And it took me back. It caught me off surprise a little bit. And I realized, how foolish am I for not taking this message to people, because a vast majority are living unconsciously. They're living in that realm of saying, I've read all the self-help books. I've read all these things. I've tried this program. I've tried that program. And whether it's diets or whatever, and they just get frustrated because it doesn't work. But what they haven't worked on is what I call really the belief even before the seed. So sometimes we work on the fruits, and we maybe even work on the roots. But beyond that is, what was the seed that was planted that created that belief that I am stupid or I am poor? And how do we go back to that initial seed, examine it, and pull it out if it's not serving us? Because that really is, we're not taught that, in anywhere really, that we need to examine the seed and what is that belief being processed, because often those beliefs were formed when we were kids. And so our mother said, we're too poor to afford that, or, no, you're dumb, or whatever. And as an adult figure, we just took them at face value and said, well, mom said it was true that we're poor, so I'm going to create all this evidence surrounding me that we are poor. And then you have years and years and decades upon these evidences of these beliefs that you're like, oh, I guess I'm poor. So when the star appears, or you're presented an opportunity through, anything, you're like, oh, I'm poor. I can't do that. I can't follow. It doesn't happen. I'm unworthy, whatever those core beliefs were.
Wow.
And it's just so sad, because, I think, that idea, fulfill the measure of your creation. And I just think of whether you believe in God or whatever, I believe in, a loving Heavenly Father. I just have like a tear come to my eye every time I think those thoughts, like I am stupid. And He has promised, all the resources and abundance necessary to fulfill the measure of your creation. Biblically, there's hundreds of references of, asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be open, all those promises. But we've allowed those beliefs to dictate and say, oh, I can't. And here you're, God looking down and saying, just trust, or, just hope. And that's really where I feel so blessed to have, found some of this. And I know I can't help everyone, but I do feel that there's more and more people saying, this is something that needs to be addressed. We need to get back to believing in miracles, believing in hope, all those things, so we can manifest those great things that are promised. And I believe all of us have that divine potential within.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't recognize that we have that lack of faith. I think, that, we believe, or we hear the scriptures, ask and you receive, and you have people that and they'll quote that and different things, but that counts for every part of your life. He he loves you and wants you to be happy in every part of your life. And he's willing and able to help you, or at least find, resources for you to help yourself to get to those places that we want to be. Is there any other challenges that you feel like that you maybe have had along the way? And what do you feel like you've learned from those?
I think, and it's just going off of what you just said, so often we hear the people we love and the people we surround ourselves with often will say, I asked and I didn't receive, so it's not going to work for me. It didn't work for me, so it didn't work for you. And it's funny, I think, being an entrepreneur, being, in this thing, I could always give the Sunday school answers, right? Most everyone can. And I even think I could have given the Sunday school lesson, on most of it. But, one of the greatest challenges right now is I think I tell people I wanted to be like the wise men, but I was acting like a wise guy. I was hard-hearted. I was proud. I was slow to learn. I wasn't following my intuition. And the beautiful thing about stepping into this arena that I'm doing right now for me is it has gone from theory to practical. It's almost like my doctrinal thesis. Say God's saying, I'm just going to keep throwing at you as much as possible just to test you to see how. And I don't think it's from a mean God. I think it's from a loving God to just say, I want to give you everything, but I just want to make sure that all of that is really what you want and that you're willing to step into that.
Keep going for it.
And that's the greatest thing that I continue to experience is I'm living in abundance, but there's still times where I'm like, heck, how are we going to pay for the house payment at the end of the month, or, whatever those are. And it's not to say that those are positive or negative. It's just checking in to say, do you still believe? Are you still living in that energy of gratitude? Are you still living in that energy of a connection and attraction and service and all those things? And it's funny, when I worked, I never had these kind of questions as much because I knew at the end of the week or every 2 weeks I would get a paycheck. So there was so much security associated with what I was doing that I didn't have to worry about, I'll never get that far down. But my wife and I were talking about it the other day, and we were evaluating, and she said, we're not here. But I said, yeah, but we're not getting to anywhere close where we used to be. And that's on the good side. We're not having these spikes and valleys like we used to, or emotionally or financially or anything. It's more the lessons are building, and we never have to go back to that deep down lesson that we had. So our progression is an upward progression. It doesn't go, we're up and we're happy and then, smash down to below bottom. And I think that all comes with this belief is we're not self-sabotaging ourselves like we used to.
Yeah. When we talk about challenges, too, I loved how you talk about sometimes God's just wanting, he throws the things at you to see if you're really going to hold to those principles, if you really take that in and take that to heart. Sometimes those challenges, we need to look at the challenges as learning opportunities, correct? That it's not the self-sabotaging thing that we had before, that it's like God loves me and he's making me stronger than I was before. Is that?
Yeah. I think of Job all the time. Here Job is, and really, it's a battle between God and Satan to say, or try Job because he is so faithful. And sometimes I don't know if we look at challenges that way to say, wow, is this God just really saying, I want to test Rebecca to the point to see how far she can actually go. And wow, I'm going to bless her 4 times or 100 times what she had. And that's a beautiful promise to just live in that realm of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I can make it another day just to see if God is just really saying,
does she
I just want to, does she have it?
To stick with it.
Yeah. And you do, and I do, because we can choose into that. We can choose that belief, that hope, that abundance, because we are conscious creators. We can choose the life that we want to live. And that goes back to where we started is, if I want to go to Thailand and I feel that's the right intuition, then I think that should be the path that I should take, because I don't want to be ever out of alignment with my intuition. Again, I really want to live in that space of saying, anything that I feel is right for me and my family, I want to take. If that's getting on a camel and following a star, I don't think it is. And sometimes I hope it's not. But I want to live in that energy that I can do that I can, have the health, and I can have the health. I can have the connection that my wife would say, I love you so much that, yes, you can take the journey for 2 years and it will be hard, but I feel that you're inspired to do it. It's not a midlife crisis. It's, it's an inspiration from on high.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I was actually just thinking about this. This is really exciting my mind, but I was actually thinking about how a lot of times I will have an intuition to go a certain direction, and there is a challenge to get to that direction I want to go to. And sometimes I do have those moments of like, well, you tell me to go this way, but you really don't give me the things that allow me to do that. But really it just came down to the faith of still believing that it's going to be there regardless of the challenges. Before we go on, let's listen to this message. Changing a paradigm takes some study, but like me, you are probably super busy. That's why we've teamed up with Audible. Go to our website, theluminousmind.net. Get a free month of Audible with 2 audiobooks, thousands of titles in exchange for only books that you absolutely love. You too can be learning on the go to keep that fire burning. Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Justin Jepsen, teaching lessons of wise men. So do you feel like you have an overall paradigm change that's happened since you've had this first thought of, do I really want to go to Thailand, type of thing?
Well, yes, I think and I think you've said it before that you were an accidental homeschooler, and I really kind of feel I was an accidental homeschooler. And my wife was even more so. I was the one that kind of became, I'll call it converted, believe in the process, because I didn't have that kind of education and I realized what was lacking in my life. But it still took me, I'll say, a decade to step into that place. And that wasn't a decade with kids necessarily. It was just a decade of me figuring out what was the right path for me to take, and acknowledging that, In Search of the Wise Men is kind of a culmination of all these thoughts. And I mentioned the Thomas Jefferson education, and I actually sent them the book, and I said, you can consider this my thesis for, my own education. It kind of was, because I had listened to some of their things. I had listened to your podcast. I had listened to all these things, and I came to a realization that it's not Thomas Jefferson education per se. It's not any one program. It's not the Saxon method. It's not anything. People have, what's your homeschooling method? And I'm like, the wise men. We have the wise men education. And really what we're preparing our kids to do is have the wealth, the health, the power, and the connection to follow their star, or to fulfill the measure of their creation. And that has morphed many times, and will probably morph some more. But that paradigm, I'm open for it to change a lot more, and it's changed so much already. I kind of just look excitedly at, the next 10 years to say, I don't know what it looks like, but it's fascinating that we can live in that energy and
at least ask the questions, right?
Yeah, the possibility, and it's just, I think it's one of the most exciting times in the history of the world, if not the most exciting time, to say, we have access to everything. There's more abundance, wealth, connection, your podcast going all over the world, whatever. You can listen to it anywhere. You can contact people wherever. It's fascinating to think that, wow, really, I have all access to anything I need. If I need $100,000, if I need $1 million, do you have the ability to create it at this moment? Maybe not, but the connections are there. People are willing to fund those things, whatever they may be, and millions and billions are made. And that's my second book I'm writing right now is called Wise Men Seek Him, Wise Guys Don't. And I talk more about the wealth creation because it's just fascinating that wealth is one of the easiest things to manifest, but it's one of the most, usually we disqualify ourselves the most because of wealth. I would say health would be the second one, but wealth is almost the universal disqualifier of our dreams. I can't afford it. It costs too much, whatever the conversation. And what's the cost to not, whatever your dream is, even if it's just to go on a trip, whether, whatever it is, what's the cost of not fulfilling that? Because the energy, the vibrational energy that you don't allow yourself to have because you failed in that endeavor sabotages you for so much more.
Yeah, it really does.
So it's worth it just to take the trip. I'm not saying put it on a credit card, but whatever you can do, go if the intuition says, because if not, then you're just, you're killing yourself from being able to do other things.
The intuition kind of creates the wealth, correct? I mean, that's what we found, like when we talked about taking our kids over to Europe forever, and then when we finally just did it, we were holding ourselves back in a lot of ways that just by saying, oh, well, that would be too expensive or that, but when we just finally like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to take this, bit of money that we have, and I don't know how this is all going to happen, how it's going to work out, but once you take that step, it's kind of like that leap of faith, that you're able to, it just does, it just works out, and then it continues to snowball from there.
And what were the memories that were created? And the $5,000 or $10,000 that it cost, you're like, that was insignificant.
Yeah.
I would pay 10 times that amount to do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was just a cherished moment with my kids and my husband that we connected, all those things. And most people don't ever do that.
Yeah,
and
the chance. Asking the question, doing it.
Allowing yourself to even remotely have the possibility, plant that seed of possibility, even if it's just you have to nurture it and almost guard it like a palace that you're just saying, no, don't you dare step on my seed of belief because that's all I have to go on right now. And I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome place that we can live in, and I think there's a renewed consciousness around the world for this. I'm not the only one speaking in this direction, and I think everyone should spend a lifetime examining their beliefs because even some of our truest beliefs may need to be questioned to say, are they serving us in the way that they should be serving us? And if not, then maybe upgrade your belief and upgrade those possibilities, because I'll use you, Rebecca. No one else in the world is able to do your podcast. If you don't do it, and you've done, 155 episodes or so, if you don't do it, no one else is going to. And that's a powerful message for everyone. If no one does the Wise Men Institute, or if I don't do the Wise Men Institute, no one else is going to do it. We each have a unique purpose to fulfill on this earth. And if we don't do it, it's not going to get done.
Yeah. And in your specific way that might help somebody. Other people may be able to do a podcast like mine, but I have a different personality. I have a different way of making it work that might reach somebody that somebody else's message might not. Is that...
Yeah, exactly. And you might touch someone's life that no one else would be able to. And whether it's 10, whether it's 100, whether it's 1,000, whether it's 1,000,000, it doesn't matter. One of the first reviewers of my book came back and said, so phenomenal, it changed my life. Just went on. And I'm like, it would be worth it 1,000 times over again just to write it for, his name was Chad.
Just for
Chad. It was really one of those tender moments for me to say, all the struggles were worth it for Chad. But I know there's more than one Chad, and I'm grateful for that. But I think all of our messages we all have a message, and it might not just be do a podcast, it might not be write a book, but we all have something that we can do, and we need to do it. And we can't allow ourselves to be disqualified because of time, because of finances, because of health. We just need to, I don't want to say crass, to just get over it, but in some ways it's like, you have a purpose, and that's a mantle that all of us needs to shoulder. And I'm trying to step into that too. it's not a day goes by as I'm like, I'm not doing enough. And I'm like, that's a belief.
Yeah.
What do I want? Like, I am powerful. I'm choosing into, living in my abundance and possibilities. And I am more than enough right now at this moment.
Yeah. Tomorrow you'll be better than you were even today. So
I hope so.
So tell me maybe some successes that you've seen from mentoring others. What significant difference do you feel like you've made?
I love the process, and I'm working with a group of other mentors right now, and through a group called Limitless, and I invite you or anyone else to be my guest. I'm on staff often, but it's a group of people that have identified that they have a purpose and a mission to share, and that they will never stop being mentored and getting more and more. And we've seen over the last year or so more than 10,000 people, just their life's been blessed. They've opened to a new level of consciousness, that they've opened to all these things. And I've realized, I use the analogy of the 7 billion people already had a mentor. But what we don't realize is once those 7 billion people finish with that mentor, they need a new mentor. And then they need another mentor, and they need another mentor. And I've just in this last year, I've mentored with 4 or 5 people that I never thought I needed. I needed help, like being vulnerable or being, more visible or stepping into my personal divine power or any of those things. And there are people that have a unique gift to help us. And all mentors won't help all of us. But again, 7 billion people need 10, 20, 100, 1,000 mentors. And I think just stepping into that possibility, saying there's an abundance of human capital in the world that can help us reach the measure of our creation as well. It's not just, monetary. It's that way. There's people that have what we need that are really close by.
Yeah.
And they can help it.
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear type of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's this renewed consciousness, at least with this group called Limitless, that people are, right now, there's probably 100 people just saying, we are committed to helping grow this globally. This awareness, this renewed consciousness, being conscious creators and helping people step into their divine potential. And it's really fun just to be part of them. And we host a 3-day conference once a month, and it's just fun. There's energy, and it's not like any processes you've ever been through. It's just really an exciting, loving time. And most people come away saying, I've never felt such unconditional love. I've never felt such healing. I've never felt such empowerment. And so it's just, I look back on the year, started about a year ago, and I came in right at the beginning as a participant, and I've kind of moved into being on staff and a few things. But it's just in a year, I look at it and say, wow, we have the mechanics here to be able to change the world and create a renewed consciousness. And we were talking the other day, it's interesting, most people believe the world is going in a bad way. And that's probably true. I'm not going to say yay or nay, but it's probably true. And, prophecy would say that it's probably the case. But probably the only people that will survive are the ones that live by their intuition. And if you think about that and this renewed awareness and consciousness, it is time, because if those times are coming, then that level of consciousness needs to be created now, so we can live by our intuition, because we can't survive any other way. And why would we want to without that, that divine intervention to say, I will give you
this direction. Yeah.
Yeah. I will give you everything you need in the moment that you need it.
That is great. I actually have been thinking a lot about that, of how, when we take the steps forward, when we move forward and we kind of work to change that paradigm, it will open up, it just helps us in the future. Like you said, when times are tough, those muscles for flexing and moving are already developed. Whereas if you haven't done that, if you haven't asked the questions, if you hadn't been the wise man versus the wise guy and sought out mentors, if you haven't done those things, when times get tough, it's going to be harder for you to move in that direction. Whereas you're already doing all that. And so times won't be tough. So.
And the Bible says, they're in the last days, their hearts will fail them. And I don't want anyone's hearts to fail them. And if I have a purpose, then it's to ensure as many people as I can plant those seeds of belief in them, because that's the thing that we can change easiest right now. It's
Yeah.
easier to change when you're not up against a rock in a hard spot,
Yeah.
when you can choose to do it now.
The hearts will fail them. Sometimes we think of that as like their physical heart, but it could be their hope. They don't have the hope anymore, that they abandon their beliefs because they, are no longer following that inspiration. I mean, it could come in a variety of ways, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And I truly believe it's the latter. It's their hope.
Yeah.
Will just start to shatter, and they won't be able to believe. And you talk about hard-hearted and stiff necks and weak knees and all those things that are, again, biblically passages. All those things are someone that has given up hope. Their heart is no longer soft and able to take in those words of life. And you think, why are we commanded to become like children? Because they are so able to just easily believe, believe in what they can do, have hope, have all those things, and they can reverse so quickly. And that's really what I'm trying to help people with, as well as saying, believe. Even when you don't have any reason to believe and have that hope. And because, you even go back to the wise men, it wasn't an easy journey. You think of that, area, wherever they came from, deserts and wars and, robbers and whatever they may be. They didn't say, "Oh, we see a star," and "Oh, crap, we got to, we got to travel how long? 2 years or 3 years?" What some people will say, on a camel. I don't even like to camp. Whatever it is, there's so many things that parallels that we can draw. It wasn't an easy journey, but what was the outcome of the journey? They were able to see the most significant thing that ever happened. And no one talks about what did they do when they came home. So I believe they came home and they testified for the rest of their lives. They just said, believe that, the hope has come, that, you can continue to step into this new belief, that reverse those self-sabotaging beliefs, because we saw the person that can regain that hope for you.
Yeah, the end of learning is really mentoring, turning around and teaching others. That's really what we're all meant and called to do, is to teach them our lessons of our life. So tell me, what do you think are some personal habits that you have that you feel have been really helpful in this paradigm change of yours?
So the most important one, I call it the hour of connection, really is, connecting to your body every day, exercising, connecting to gratitude, for 5 minutes or so every day. I just blurt out gratitude stuff, connection to God, through scriptures, through prayer. And then I connect to vision and my purpose, but then I also try to connect every day with someone, whether it's a text to a friend, whether it's a letter, whether it's an email, whatever, a phone call. If I do those 6 things every day, then I'm in alignment with my higher purpose and my intuition. When I don't do those, then it's really hard to have a great day. So that is the single most important thing that I do every day, an hour of connection. And my sweet spot is 2 hours. I don't usually get 2 hours, but depends on how sleepy I am, before the kids get up. But it really is a powerful thing. And there's a book, it's not the same, it's called Miracle Morning, but he talks a lot about the same principles in a little bit different framework, but kind of the same thing is we need to connect to all those parts of us to be able to live in that higher purpose.
And that's really, I think, I've found to be the key to keep my mind lit up, to keep that passion rolling and to keep the excitement that I have to live that life's mission too. So I'll definitely second that. So tell me, what long-term goals do you have, and how do you feel like that's going to work into your legacy?
So my most immediate and long-term goal is I am working to create what I reference a maker space, but really what it is I like to compare it like a gym with tools, so you have access to 3D printers and lathes and laser cutters and all those different things. But even more so, it has, I want to build one where I'd have a graphic designer and a book editor and all those things in-house, where people could come in for a monthly membership. They could have access to everything.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And I think of it as like an incubator, and you think of what an incubator is, a place of warmth. A hatchling can, an egg can hatch. And I wouldn't say that being an entrepreneur is easy. But I do believe that the entrepreneur lifestyle is what everyone needs to fulfill their measure, their creation on different levels. But it's hard to do that. But this idea of this maker space, and there's some around the country, maybe not in the same format, but I want to give warmth to those individuals that are trying to step out of something, whether it's to write a book, whether it's to start mentoring, whether it's to start coaching, whether it's an idea that they have for a life-saving device, whatever, or just a fun new skateboard, any of those things. I want to create a environment that they can try, and for a minimal cost, $50 a month or whatever, that they can access all these things and they can just come in and have a fun. Because the third book, I call it a trilogy, is called God is a Maker. And I believe our divine birthright is to make.
Yeah, we're all creators, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And so in that purpose, that's what I'm trying to do, is create that place where we can reclaim that birthright of making stuff, because we've lost so much of that. And how that connects back to the wise men is that really enables a person to say, okay, can I get my life and my house in order to a point where I can live by intuition? I can fulfill the measure of my creation. And I would hope the answer is yes for everyone that is part of that.
Yeah. I love that idea of helping other people create, because I feel like sometimes we don't have any other options or to really follow that path, because we just don't have those facilities anymore. They're just gone.
And the garage is not the same. And I had to learn that the hard way. When I first joined my first makerspace, there was a girl with a piercing in her lip, and there was a guy with a tattoo on his face, and there was someone of a different color, and there was someone of a different religious background and political background. And if you put us all together, you would say, how in the world did these 6 people come together? And they were some of my choicest friends. And I realized, I'm like, we came together in the truest form of what God sent us to do, and that's to create. And we were all creators. We were all makers in that space. And it didn't matter who I was voting for. It didn't matter anything else. They didn't care. They just cared that I was there with them and I could help. And that's one thing that I realize so often is we don't reach out very far from our sphere of influence.
Also,
yeah. Your friends are probably not much beyond what you look like, you think like, but the only place that I've ever been is where that's happened is 2 places. One is this Limitless, and the 2 is this makerspace, or these makerspaces where it doesn't matter because we're all coming together as children of God and trying to fulfill the measure of our creation. And awesome. It's just a beautiful thing for me, and I'm happy to be part of it.
Well, give us some final parting words of advice for our listeners. Then please give us your contact information on how we can find your book and everything.
Yeah, so my words of wisdom, I guess, from the wise men, I call myself the wise men maker, really is allow yourself to explore the possibilities. If there's a thought that comes up, just question those thoughts. Whatever, if you want to do something, you say, I don't have enough money, question that. Don't allow yourself to live in that energy and start the process of allowing the possibilities and the promises in the Bible or any of your holy scriptures or any of the words of wisdom or the books of wisdom. Allow those to start gestating in your mind, because it might not happen overnight, but I believe that if you allow that to happen, you can create all the things, because I do believe in everyone that they're sent here to fulfill that measure of their creation. And I believe that you have access to all the resources in abundance to make that possible. And I had a friend that always said, all means all, and all is all that all means. So, but you think of all, I think that's a powerful word. It's not 75%, it's not 85%, it's all. We have access to all stuff. So you can access me through my website, Jepsen, that's Jepsen, 1PEN.com. And my book is called In Search of the Wise Men. You can get it there, or you can get it on Amazon. Those are the 2 places. And just reach out. I'm in that process of continuing to create and continue to write and all those things. And so I'd love for feedback or just help anyone in that process. And again, as I mentioned, if anyone wants to be my guest, you, Rebecca, or any of your listeners to Limitless, you can just send me an email at jj@justinjepsen.com, and I can get you a ticket. Again, as staff, I have a few of those, and I'd love to have you, because it's just it's a phenomenal event, and we're starting to go regionally. I think there's one in Idaho coming up and a few things. So they'll be spreading out across the country as well.
I've definitely heard of it. I know it's coming here for sure. But
yeah, and exciting.
And if they want to email you directly, do you want to give them your email just in case?
Yeah, so it's JJ, as Justin Jepsen, JJ at justinjepsen.com.
And I really would encourage our listeners to go to his website. Again, it's justinjepsen.com. He's got some other fun stories on there that we didn't talk about today. And I know you can get his book there as well. We'll be sure to also link up all that information that we discussed today on our website. But thank you so much, Justin, for joining us and helping light our minds on fire.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm so happy to finally connect with you after listening for so many years.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Justin Jepsen, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out the Services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of illuminating content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content, tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.